The Grasp of Avarice is the newest dungeon inside of Destiny 2, releasing alongside the Bungie 30th anniversary, and well, you read the title, I'm going to be showing you how to beat it. Now, I don't really do sponsored videos here on the channel, and that just means I have more time to plug my G Fuel code. Christmas is right around the corner, and G Fuel has bumped my code up to 30% off. So if you're looking to pick up some last-minute Christmas gifts, well, wink, wink. Also, G Fuel is totally, scientifically, clinically proven to increase your DPS and god roll drops inside Destiny 2, so I'm just saying, all right, better pick some up while you can. Okay, timestamps down below so you can skip around to whatever part you need. But let's get started. Now, before we even talk about the dungeon, let's talk about team composition and what you're gonna wanna bring into this dungeon to make it as easy as possible. Let's first start with classes and subclasses. My team found it easiest with one Well of Radiance Warlock. This is mainly for boss DPS because both fights are in a wide open area with little cover. One high damage super like Thunder Crash or Bottom Tree Goldie for big boss DPS, and one random class on Stasis to activate Focusing Lens. Now, yes, Focusing Lens and Well of Radiance did catch a stealth nerf if you're unfamiliar with how it used to work. Well, as long as you had Focusing Lens on and someone on your team casted a Well of Radiance, all weapon damage coming from inside the Well of Radiance would count as light ability damage. That no longer works, and only the Well of Radiance caster's weapon damage counts as light ability damage. But even then, having a Well of Radiance is still very beneficial to protect your team while dealing boss damage. If you are on Warlock, then make sure you're running Lunafactions so you and your teammates will have increased reload speeds for higher DPS inside your well during boss fights. If you're running Thunder Crash, then throw on Falling Star to become the literal missile during boss fights. Bottom Tree Goldie should be running Celestial Nighthawk for the same reason Thunder Crash is running Fallen Star, just massive damage. And finally, the Stasis person, just make sure you have something like a Dustfield Nade equipped so during boss fights you can activate Focusing Lens for your teammates. Now, when it comes to loadouts like weapons and mods, well, everyone can kind of run the same thing. My team found great success with Salvager Salvo for group clear and single target damage, along with Threaded Needle for boss damage. If you don't have Salvagers, I have made a guide on how to get it pretty fast, and if you're in need of a Threaded Needle, then head on over to the helm and focus these engrams on screen. You'll have a 33% chance to get a threaded, a 1 in 3 chance essentially. Now, just because my team had good success with these weapons doesn't mean you can't use other things like Cartesian for single target damage / boss damage, a Firefly Fatebringer for ad clear / group clear, and a 1k / sleeper for big boss damage. I'm just throwing out examples here, but you get my point. This dungeon doesn't require any crazy special loadouts. Now for mods, make sure you're using Particle Deconstruction, acquirable from your seasonal artifact, on your class item because, well, it's busted. Focusing Lens, also acquired from your seasonal artifact, so when you're doing boss DPS and your stasis wielding teammate throws their nade on the boss, your light abilities, i.e. your Thunder Crash Goldie, weapon damage from inside the Well of Radiance, only if you're the caster though, will do increased damage. Then from there, just make sure you're running your basic ammo finder, reserves, and scavenger mods. Also, if you want to be on the safer side, then I recommend Protective Light, if you have it, alongside something to charge you with light, like taking charge. Okay, so now with team comp out of the way, let's start the dungeon. But before we do, make sure you pick up the quest for Gjallarhorn. This dungeon is directly tied to Gjallarhorn, its catalyst, and one of its ornaments. So if you don't have it, go pick up the quest from Xur, then head to Shalhan in the Cosmodrome, then start the dungeon. I have an entire video for getting Gjallarhorn, so you can check that out. Also, I will be including the 3 chests required to get the catalyst in this video, but just know that you must have Gjallarhorn before these chests do anything. So once you beat the dungeon, get Gally, then come back to this video and use the timestamps to skip the chest locations. Also, I will be showing all the locations for the Richest Deadman Alive Triumph, which does unlock the Gjallarhorn Ornament. Timestamps for those as well. Okay, to the dungeon. Now, in order to start the dungeon, you will need to select it either via the Cosmodrome or Eternity. It's kind of weird that you can select it from 2 different spots, but you can. Upon spawning in, you are going to be in front of the D1 loot cave accompanied by a bunch of enemies. Your goal here is to kill enemies and collect the engrams they dropped and deposit them into the white crystal inside the cave. Yes, it's okay to get excited your first time through thinking a bunch of exotic engrams just dropped for you. You should have seen my team on launch day for this. We were kind of freaking out at first. Once you have deposited enough of those engrams, 50 to be exact, the floor in the cave is going to crumble, revealing a tunnel / this is the entrance to the dungeon. Now hold on, I want to quickly explain how the engrams work because they're a reoccurring mechanic throughout the dungeon, and I feel like it would be beneficial for you to know how they actually work. When certain enemies are killed, they will drop what looks like an exotic engram, but once it hits the ground, it will turn red. In order to pick the engram up, you simply need to walk over it. Picking up an engram will give you the Burdened by Riches buff on the left-hand side of your screen. The more engrams you pick up, the higher the stack of the Burdened by Riches buff you will get. The max stack you can get is 100. This buff has a timer on it. It's 30 seconds, and when that timer hits 0, you die. So how do you not die? Well, you have two options. Pick up another fake engram, which will fully reset the timer, or deposit the buff into a crystal. In order to deposit the buff into a crystal, you need to stand next to the crystal. The crystal will begin flashing red, and you will see the Burdened by Riches buff, like the actual stack on your screen, begin going down and then just disappearing. The more stacks you have, the longer it will take to deposit. Also, whenever you're depositing the buff, your timer will freeze. So even if you're at, 0 seconds with like 20 stacks, you won't die unless you walk away from the crystal before it's done depositing. 3 final things to know is when the engrams are on the ground, they do show on the map, so just, remember that. If an engram is on the ground long enough, it will explode if not picked up. And finally, if you pick up 10 engrams, you immediately get your super. So upon entering the dungeon, this is where the first Gjallarhorn chest is going to be, along with 2 messages from the Richest Deadman Alive Triumph. In order to open these Gjallarhorn chests, you are going to need to damage a certain Vandal in the area until he drops an engram. This engram will give you, of course, the Burdened by Riches buff, which is required to open the chest. Like if you go up to the chest, it's going to say requires Burdened by Riches. So once you have the Burdened by Riches buff, go ahead and open the chest. Nothing will come out of it, but a message will pop up in the bottom left of your screen letting you know that, well, you did it right. Now from here on for the rest of the video, anytime that there is a room that has a galley chest or a Vandal or a message for the Richest Deadman Alive Triumph, I'm just going to show it on screen and I'm not going to commentate over it, as it'll just be much easier if I do that and then you use the timestamps. So once you're past the first room with the Shrieker and the Knight, you will keep moving forward until you reach the Rusted Gangplank. Once you have reached the Rusted Gangplank, you will see 2 doors and a circular looking vault thing with a bunch of arrows pointing around it. The door on the far right will kill you the second you try to open it. The door on the left will also kill you if you just run straight in. You need to instead jump over the pressure plate or walk around the desk in the room to get to the lever safely. Once you have hit that lever, exit the room and you will see that the previously closed circular door has opened up. Once inside, go around the corner and you will see a horizontal bridge, and on the other side, a door with a lever next to it. Pulling this lever will kill you. Instead, jump on the bridge and wait for it to collapse. You need to time your jump, so as soon as it collapses, you can jump into the hidden room under the bridge with the correct lever inside of it. Hit this lever, then return to the previous room, the one that you were in before going into the circular looking door thing with the arrows pointing at it. And then from here, you will need to scale the wall until you reach these big tubes with fans in them. You will need to go into the fan on the far side, the same wall that the death doors below you are on. Step on the pressure plate and a path directly above you will open. You will then need to continue scaling the wall in front of you, avoiding pressure plates and trapdoors until you reach what looks like a dead end with a lever and a map looking thing on the wall. Pulling the lever will open the door in front of you, revealing a large space with multiple rooms. From here, your objective is to reach the room furthest from the entrance by going into each room and pulling a lever. Now, yes, technically you can just jump from the entrance to the last room if you have lions or a sword on, but if you can't, well then here's how you do it. Now, I could sit here and number the rooms, but there's really no need. All you have to do is go in order by which room opens when you pull a lever, and then you exit the room you're in. Once you've made it to the final room, you will notice a lever. Pulling it does nothing. Instead, look up and you will notice an opening leading to a secret room with the real lever that you need to pull. From here, you need to go back to where you first entered the large space with all the rooms in it, and you will notice a massive wall has opened up. Inside this new opening will be another lever. Pull it, and another massive wall on the other side will open up. Go to it and open the door on the right. Opening the door on the left will, you guessed it, kill you. Once through the door, you will be brought to another large space. This one being circular, though, with multiple rooms and levers. It's pretty much the same thing as the last space you were just in. Go to the lever directly to the right as when you first entered the large space. Then go to the opposite side of the circle for the next lever. Then go back to the first lever to the newly opened room behind it and hit the last lever. After hitting all three levers, the room directly under where you entered will open and some Fallen will spawn, one wielding a Scorch cannon. The Scorch cannon, just like the fake Engrams, is a reoccurring mechanic, so let me explain how it works. Scorch cannons drop from Scorch Vandals. When picked up, they will have 10 shots. Their only purpose is to power these things that I'm just gonna call generators. If the generator is connected to a door, then the Scorch cannon must be fully charged up. You fully charge it by holding down your fire button when you fire. For each second the trigger is held, you will hear it charge up to the next level. At level 3, it's fully charged. Also, these cannons do no damage to the wielder, so if you're in a pinch and you're getting swarmed and you have a cannon, just fire it relentlessly at your feet. No worries. Okay, so back to the circle room. Once you have the Scorch cannon, find the generator and open the door connected to it. You can always see what these generators are connected to by following the girthy orange wire coming out of it. Once the door has opened, head up the stairs, but be careful as once you make it far enough up, a giant barrel will drop and insta-kill you the second it makes contact with you. There's little cubby holes on the sides of the stairs that you can hop into for safety. From here, continue on until you reach a massive broken bridge with a big angry ogre on the other side. Throw a rally flag down and cross the bridge to enter your first boss encounter. Phry'zhia something, the Insatiable, aka the Ogre, is a pretty easy encounter mechanically. When you first jump across the bridge, you will notice 4 things. First, the crystal right in front of you. Remember the entrance to the dungeon? Well, yeah, it's gonna work the same way here. Second, the 2 generators on each side of the large space. Remember how we power those things with Scorch cannons? Yes. Third, on the other side of the Ogre, some Fallen, one of them being a Scorch Vandal. And fourth, well, the massive Ogre. Your goal here is to get the Scorch Cannon from the Vandal and use it to power the generators on each side. Remember to fully charge up your cannon shot. Once the generator has been activated, the garage-like doors beneath it will open, revealing a new room. You and your whole team need to rush into the room. This room will spawn a ton of enemies, and when these enemies are killed, they drop fake engrams. Once all the enemies are dead and all the fake engrams picked up, you can either A, go and do the other generator immediately and kill all the enemies in that room, or B, go and deposit your burden by riches buff at the crystal. Remember, the buff only lasts 30 seconds, so you have to be fast if you want to do both rooms back to back. Whichever way you do, it will take exactly 25 stacks of the Burdened by Riches buff, or about 2 full rooms worth of engrams, to fill the crystal up. Once the crystal has been filled, the ogre will no longer be immune and you can begin damaging it. You're going to have about 30 seconds or so to do as much damage as possible. If you have a Well of Radiance, then feel free to damage the ogre at the crystal location. Make sure your stasis player throws their nade right away so everyone's focusing lens mod will activate. Pop Thunder Crash, Goldie, everything you got. This boss can indeed be one-faced. If you aren't able to get the one face, just rinse and repeat what you just did. The only other thing to know is that if you just shot a generator, that generator can't be reactivated until another generator has been shot. You essentially just have to flip-flop rooms back and forth for this encounter. You'll know when a generator can be shot because it'll have little white glowing lights on the front of it. Once the ogre has been defeated, collect your loot and go to where the Scorch Vandals spawned during this encounter. You will notice a new door has opened up. Go through the door and follow the path until you reach a big dark room with 2 control panels. Activating the control panel on the right kills you, so don't do that. Activating the control panel on the left opens the big, massive door. Now, you don't want to just go in here lollygagging, flipping switches, because the second that you flip the switch on the left control panel and those big doors open, the next encounter begins. Now, I don't know if you would technically classify this as an encounter because you don't get loot for it, but I'm just going to call it the Sparrow Encounter. Now, I would try to explain this encounter, but it would be much better if I just showed you. There's only a few things to know. One is that you don't need to get off your Sparrow to defuse the mines, which, by the way, is your main objective here, to get from point A to point B while defusing these mines scattered throughout the map. Hopping off your Sparrow to immediately resummon another one is always better than letting your Sparrow blow up, because if your Sparrow blows up, then you'll be on a cooldown timer before you can re-pull out your Sparrow, and the little buttons scattered throughout this encounter extends the time you have to defuse the mines. Just drive close to them and they'll activate. There'll be an audio cue to let you know. If you've done the Scourge Sparrow Encounter, then this should be a breeze. Once you've reached the end, before continuing on through the crystal tunnel room thingy, go to where I show on screen to the second secret chest. Once you've passed through the crystal tunnel and dropped down, you will now be at the Fallen Shield Encounter. This encounter takes place in a massive, wide open area. This area is made up of what I'm just going to refer to as islands. The goal of this encounter is to disable the Fallen Shield. In order to do that, you must destroy 4 of the big yellow bombs on the outside ring of the big air balloon looking thing floating in the center. Now, in order to detonate these bombs, you will need to launch dead servitor bodies at them. You do this by looking around to the other islands until you see said servitor. Only one servitor will spawn at a time, and they're pretty easy to spot because they'll have this white glowing shield around them. Once you've spotted the servitor, you're going to want to get to the island it's on by using the cannon on whatever island you're on. You will more than likely have to island hop, as each cannon has limited range. You activate the cannon by killing the Scorch Vandal, which spawn on every island, so you'll always have a Scorch cannon, taking the Scorch cannon, and shooting the generator connected to the cannon. Yes, there's two different cannons: the Scorch cannon, which is the weapon, and the actual cannon, which is like a cannonball launcher, but you're the ball. Once you're at the island of said servitor, you first need to disable the white shield that I mentioned earlier around it. To do this, you need to kill the enemies surrounding the servitor, pick up the fake engrams they drop, and deposit them into the crystal. The crystal can be found in the building-like structure on whatever island you're on. Once you've collectively, as a team, deposited 20 stacks of the Burdened by Riches buff, the servitor shield will break. Kill it and then roll its body to the base of the cannonball launcher. Its body has a pretty strong magnetic pull to the base of the launcher, so it shouldn't be too hard. Just don't lose it, because if you lose it and it goes flying off the map, well, then you have to do it again. From here, line up the launcher with the yellow bombs on the ring and activate the launcher. If it's your first time on that island, then the cannon should already be lined up, but if not, then just line it up. Then just rinse and repeat this until the fallen shield has been disabled. Once the fallen shield has been disabled, you will now have access to the center island. Collect your loot and position the launcher on this island straight up, launch up, and continue to the next encounter. The next encounter is going to be the final encounter and the boss of this dungeon, Captain Avarokk the Covetous. I think I'm saying this right. The mechanic of this boss fight is very similar to the Ogre Encounter. Get Scorch Cannon, activate generators with Scorch Cannon, collect engrams, deposit your Burdened by Riches buff into crystal, and damage boss. Now, even though mechanically on paper it's similar to the Ogre, the actual encounter is very different. This boss fight takes place in a dome-like room with platforms on each side of the main structure in the middle. The ground of this room is covered in water. Now, even though you are a god-slaying guardian, water is your weakness. Seriously, I don't know why Savathûn had to steal our light. All she had to do was just fill up the tower with about 2 feet of water and we'd be done for. Nonetheless, don't touch the water, you'll die instantly. Proceed to the center structure, throw a rally flag down, and start the encounter by going near the fake engram on the floor in front of the crystal. Once the encounter has been started, a few things will happen. Low tier enemies will spawn on the platform surrounding the center structure. The boss will spawn on the center structure. A shank named R-M80 will also spawn on the center structure. And finally, a vandal named Grisprax. That's right? Grisprax will spawn on the center structure as well. The boss and the shank will never leave the center structure, and the low tier ads on the outside platforms will never get on the center structure. They'll always stay on the outside. The only two enemies that can go back and forth from the outside platforms to the center are the Scorch Vandal and Grisprax. The best way to go about dealing with this boss fight is once it is started, have 2 players focus on the ads on the outside platforms and have 1 player focus on the shank and Grisprax in the middle. Once all the ads are cleared on the outside platforms, the 2 players clearing them should join the other player in trying to kill the shank and Grisprax. The shank is just super annoying and can easily kill you when you're trying to jump from platform to platform in this room. And then Grisprax is also very annoying, but does have a mechanic, and that's that it can jump to the outside platforms and steal the fake engrams that you need to fill up the crystal. So yeah, both of them also just make dealing boss damage very, very annoying. Once both are dead, the 2 other players that were just clearing ads on the outside platforms can begin clearing the new low tier ads spawning on the outside platforms. These ads will continue to spawn throughout the entire encounter. The other player should now turn their attention to finding and killing the Scorch Vandal for his Scorch Cannon. The generators for this room can be found on the big metal beams that are attached to the center structure. There's 3 of them, 1 on the left, 1 on the right, and 1 at the bottom. Shoot the generator with a charged up shot from the Scorch Cannon, and fake engrams will begin raining from the walls of the room. It's going to take collectively 60 stacks of the Burdened by Riches buff to fill up the crystal. Now, just like the Ogre Encounter, your team can either deposit their buffs after each generator or do multiple generators in a row. Nonetheless, once the crystal has been filled, the boss will teleport to the upper part of the center structure, do a little animation, and then become vulnerable. This is where you're going to want to begin doing damage. So everything you got, just like Ogre, this boss can be one-phased. If you have a Well of Radiance or something to protect you like a bubble, then feel free to do damage at the crystal location as you have the best view of the boss, but it doesn't really matter where your team decides to do damage. Once damage phase is over, assuming you did it one phase, just rinse and repeat. The shank and Grisprax will spawn again, so don't forget about that. But once Captain Avarokk is dead, collect your loot and the final message for the Richest Deadman Alive Triumph. And congratulations, you have now beaten the Grasp of Avarice Dungeon. I hope you enjoyed this guide and found it helpful. If you did, then feel free to slap a like on it, as it took me quite a while to make, as I'm the type of person that likes going super in-depth on everything, just so as many people as possible can understand. This is my first guide on end-game content, so if you liked it and want to see me make more guides on stuff like this, like potentially the new Witch Queen raid, or the new dungeons coming up, going into year, 5 now? Then let me know in the comment section. If there's something you didn't like and think I should do different, then also let me know. I'm always open for constructive feedback. With all that being said, feel free to share this video with a friend that you might know that might need help with the new dungeon. I'll take care of them. But I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.